Welcome, dear listeners, to another descent into the abyss that is the shadow behind you. I am your guide through the forgotten corridors of history, where the veils between the living and the damned grow thin as spider silk. Tonight, we venture into the heart of the Ozark Mountains, that ancient labyrinth of shadowed hollows and whispering pines, where the earth itself seems to harbor secrets too dark for the light of day. It's 1881, a time when the American frontier still clung to its wild edges, and civilization was but a fragile lantern flickering against the encroaching night. Imagine the Ozarks as they were then, jagged ridges cloaked in perpetual fog, where rivers carve through limestone like veins pulsing with hidden life. The air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, mingled with the sharp tang of wood smoke from isolated cabins. By day, the sun struggles to pierce the canopy, casting dappled shadows that dance like restless spirits. But by night, the mountains come alive with sounds that defy explanation. The hoot of an owl that sounds too human, the rustle of leaves without wind, the distant wail that could be a coyote or something far older, far hungrier. In these remote enclaves, communities huddled together against the unknown. Towns like Hollow Ridge, fictional in name perhaps, but rooted in the real hamlets that dotted the landscape, were places where law was enforced not by books, but by the iron will of men who stared into the abyss and refused to blink. And in Hollow Ridge, that man was Sheriff Elias Thorne, a figure of legend, whispered about in taverns and around hearth fires. Thorne was said to be as unyielding as the granite beneath the soil. Tall and gaunt, with eyes like polished obsidian that reflected no light, he patrolled the dirt roads with a revolver that gleamed like a promise of judgment. But what if I told you, listeners, that Elias Thorne was no ordinary lawman? What if the tales that echoed through those misty valleys spoke not of his life, but of his refusal to embrace death? Picture this: a moonless night in the autumn of 1881, the kind where the darkness presses against your skin like a cold hand. A band of outlaws, desperate and feral, ambushes the sheriff on a lonely trail. Gunshots crack like thunder, and Thorne falls, his body riddled with lead, blood soaking the earth in a dark sacrament. The outlaws flee, certain of their victory. Yet, as the first hints of dawn creep over the ridges, something stirs. The body twitches, rises, and walks back into town as if the grave had spat him out unfinished. This is no mere ghost story, my friends. This is the sinister tale of the sheriff who wouldn't dare. A narrative woven from the threads of forgotten diaries, oral histories passed down in hushed tones, and the lingering chill that still haunts the Ozarks today. As we peel back the layers, you'll feel the fog seeping into your bones, the weight of unseen eyes watching from the tree line. Why did Thorne return? Was it a curse from the ancient spirits of the land, a pact with forces beyond mortal ken, or something far more human? A corruption of the soul that defies the natural order? Lean in closer now, for the shadows are lengthening. Let the world outside fade away as we step into the past, where every creak of a floorboard could be a warning, every flicker of candlelight a lure for what lurks beyond. In the Ozarks of 1881, death was not always the end. Sometimes it was merely an invitation for something worse to begin. And as we unravel this tale, ask yourself, what would you do if the man sworn to protect you became the very embodiment of eternal dread? The answer, dear listeners, may lie in the darkness just behind you. But before we dive deeper, let me paint the scene more vividly. The Ozarks, forged in the fires of geological upheaval millions of years ago, are a place where time folds upon itself. Caves riddle the ground like the burrows of some colossal beast, and springs bubble up with waters said to heal, or curse, those who drink them. In 1881, the region was still reeling from the scars of the Civil War, with bushwhackers and jayhawkers leaving trails of blood that soaked into the soil. Families scratched out livings from rocky farms, distilling moonshine in hidden stills and clinging to superstitions brought from the old world Scots. Irish ballads of fairies and banshees, blended with Native American lore of shape-shifters and guardian spirits. Hollow Ridge itself nestled in a valley flanked by bluffs that rose like silent sentinels. The town boasted a single saloon, a general store, and a church whose steeple pierced the sky like a defiant finger. Folks there lived in rhythm with the seasons, planting by the signs of the zodiac, harvesting under full moons, and warding off evil with horseshoes nailed above doors. But evil, as they say, finds a way, and in Elias Thorne it found a vessel. Born in the shadow of the mountains around 1840, Thorne was a product of his time, a veteran of the war, scarred not just by bullets, but by the horrors he witnessed in the guerrilla fighting that ravaged Missouri. He returned home a changed man, his laughter replaced by a steely silence. Appointed sheriff in 1875, he brought order with a fist of iron, hanging rustlers from the old oak in the town square and chasing moonshiners into the hills. But whispers followed him, rumors of a night spent lost in the woods, where he encountered something unnatural. A witch, some said, or a devil at the crossroads. As the year 1881 dawned, strange omens plagued Hollow Ridge. Livestock vanished without trace, their bones found picked clean in impossible places. Children spoke of a tall shadow man watching from the forest edge. And then the ambush. Thorne's death should have been the end, but it was only the beginning. Witnesses swore they saw him stagger into town at sunrise, wounds closing like mouths sealing secrets. The doctor, old Doc Harlan, pronounced him dead one moment, only to watch him sit up and demand his badge back. What force animated him? Was it the restless spirits of the Cherokee, displaced from their ancestral lands, or the darker arts practiced by granny women in hidden cabins? Potions of mandrake and belladonna that blurred the line between life and undeath. As we embark on this journey, feel the chill settle in. The tale of Sheriff Thorne is one that burrows into the mind, festering like an untreated wound. It reminds us that in the isolation of the mountains, madness and the supernatural entwine until you can't tell one from the other. By the time we're done, you might glance over your shoulder, wondering if the shadows in your own room hold similar secrets. So dim the lights, draw the curtains, and let the story consume you. The sheriff who wouldn't die awaits. Now, let us step fully into the mist-shrouded world of 1881 Hollow Ridge. The town awoke that fateful morning to a sky heavy with rain clouds, the air thick with the promise of storm. Chickens scratched in the muddied streets, and the blacksmith's hammer rang out like a tolling bell. But beneath the mundane rhythm, an undercurrent of unease rippled through the inhabitants. Word had spread like wildfire through dry brush. The outlaws known as the Blackwell Gang had struck again, this time targeting the sheriff himself on the old logging trail. Elias Thorne had ridden out the previous evening to investigate reports of cattle theft. The Blackwells, brothers Jed and Harlan, along with a ragtag crew of deserters, were notorious for their brutality, leaving behind mutilated bodies as warnings. Thorne, ever the lone enforcer, went alone, his horse's hooves echoing into the gathering dusk. The ambush came swift and merciless. 5 shots rang out, each finding its mark in Thorne's chest and abdomen. He toppled from his saddle, his body crumpling into the ferns like a discarded puppet. The gang rifled through his pockets, taking his silver watch and badge as trophies, then melted back into the woods, laughing at their triumph over the indestructible sheriff. But as the night deepened, something unnatural stirred in that lonely glade. The moon, hidden behind clouds, offered no witness. Thorne's body lay still for hours, blood pooling and congealing in the cool earth. Then, a twitch, a finger curling as if grasping at life. His chest heaved, expelling bullets like vomit from a poisoned stomach. Eyes snapping open, he gasped, the sound ragged and inhuman like wind through a cracked tomb. Slowly, agonizingly, he rose, his clothes stiff with dried gore, and began the long walk back to town. Dawn broke as Thorne staggered into Hollow Ridge's main street. The first to see him was Widow Mays, drawing water from the well. She dropped her bucket with a clatter, her scream piercing the morning calm. "Ghost!" she wailed, crossing herself. Others emerged from their homes, the saloon keeper, rubbing sleep from his eyes, the schoolteacher, clutching a Bible, young Tommy Hale, the stable boy who froze in terror. Thorn's face was ashen, his eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. He collapsed outside the jailhouse, but not before muttering, "The law ain't done with me yet." Doc Harlan was summoned, a grizzled veteran of the war, with hands steady from years of patching bullet holes. He examined Thorn in the dim light of the jail cell, probing the wounds that should have been fatal.
"By God, Elias,"
he whispered, "these holes, they're closing, like the flesh is knitting itself." Thorn, pale but alert, demanded whiskey and his gun. No explanation, no plea for help, just a cold command that brooked no argument. The town buzzed with speculation. Miracle, devil's work. Some recalled old tales of haints, restless spirits that possessed the living, while others whispered of curses from the Osage spirits, angered by white encroachment. As days turned to weeks, Thorn resumed his duties with a vigor that unnerved everyone. He patrolled the hills relentlessly, his footsteps silent as a predator's. The Blackwell gang, hearing of his survival, grew bold, raiding a nearby farm and leaving a message carved into a barn door. "Dead men tell no tales." "But you ain't dead, are ya, Sheriff?" Thorn's response was swift. He tracked them to a cave in the bluffs, a place locals avoided, said to be haunted by echoes of ancient rituals. Inside the cave, the confrontation unfolded in darkness, lit only by torchlight. Jed Blackwell laughed as he fired point blank into Thorn's face. The sheriff reeled, blood spraying, but did not fall. Instead, he lunged forward, his hands closing around Jed's throat with inhuman strength. "You can't kill what's already gone." Thorn growled, his voice a gravelly echo. Harlan Blackwell fled in panic, but not before seeing his brother's neck snap like dry kindling. The gang scattered, but Thorn hunted them one by one, his wounds healing before their eyes. The town, initially relieved, soon turned fearful. Children hid when Thorn passed, his shadow stretching unnaturally long in the afternoon sun. Women clutched charms of rowan wood and salt. Men in the saloon spoke in low tones of how Thorn no longer ate, no longer slept, only watched, his eyes reflecting the flames like a wolf's. Rumors swelled. He was seen drinking from a spring tainted with witch's brew. He had dug up his own grave from a childhood fever, refusing death even then. Introduced now the key figures who would unravel the mystery. First, Amelia Crow, the town's herbalist, a woman of mixed Cherokee and Scots descent, known as a granny woman for her potions and divinations. With raven hair streaked gray and eyes sharp as flint, she lived on the outskirts in a cabin festooned with drying herbs. Amelia had warned Thorn years ago. "The mountains remember, Elias. Bargain with them, and they'll claim more than your soul." Then, Reverend Silas Grant, a fire and brimstone preacher whose sermons thundered about damnation, portly and red-faced, he saw Thorn's revival as a sign of the end times, quoting Revelation, "And death shall flee from them." Suilas rallied the God-fearing folk, whispering that the sheriff was the Antichrist in badge and boots, and young Deputy Luke Harlan, Doc's son, a wide-eyed lad of 20 with dreams of heroism. Luke idolized Thorn at first, but as the sheriff's pallor grew waxy and his temper volatile, doubt crept in. "What's keeping you here, Sheriff?" Luke asked one night in the jailhouse, the lantern casting grotesque shadows. Thorn's reply chilled him. "Obligation, boy. The law don't rest, neither do I." Tension built as autumn leaves turned blood red. Strange events plagued Hollow Ridge wells soared overnight. Crops withered under frost that spared the wilds, and nocturnal howls echoed closer each night. Amelia confided in Luke that she suspected Thorn had encountered a skinwalker, a shape-shifting entity from native lore, during his war days, binding it to him in a desperate bid for survival. One evening, as fog rolled down from the peaks like a shroud, Thorn confronted a moonshiner in the woods. The man, terrified, shot him thrice. Thorn laughed, a hollow, echoing sound, and strangled him, leaving the body dangling from a branch. Witnesses saw Thorn's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, his breath fogging not with warmth, but cold. The first part of our narrative closes on a precipice of dread. The town teetered on the edge of panic, whispers turning to plans. Would they confront the undying sheriff or become complicit in his eternal vigil? As winter's chill approached, the shadows in Hollow Ridge grew longer, and the line between protector and monster blurred into oblivion. As winter's icy fingers gripped the Ozarks, the tale of Sheriff Elias Thorne deepened into a vortex of horror. Hollow Ridge, once a bastion of frontier resilience, now felt like a cage where the bars were woven from fear itself. The snow fell in silent sheets, blanketing the ground and muffling sounds, yet amplifying the unnatural quiet that followed Thorne wherever he went. His patrols became nocturnal rituals, his boots leaving no prints in the frost, as if the earth rejected his touch. The conflicts escalated with the arrival of Harlan Blackwell, the surviving brother who rallied remnants of his gang and sympathetic outlaws. Harlan, a scarred brute with a vendetta burning hotter than hellfire, spread tales of Thorne's devil pact. In neighboring towns, "He ain't human no more," he'd rasp in smoky taverns. Shot him dead, and he rose like Lazarus, but twisted. This drew bounty hunters and curiosity seekers to Hollow Ridge, turning the quiet hamlet into a powder keg. One fateful night in December, under a hunter's moon that bathed the mountains in silvery dread, Harlan's posse ambushed Thorne again, this time in the town square. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows on the snow. Guns blazed, bullets tearing into Thorne's form. He staggered, fell to one knee, blood staining the white ground black. The crowd watched in horror as he rose once more, wounds sealing with audible pops, like bones resetting. "You fools," he snarled, his voice echoing unnaturally. "Death don't stick to me." In the ensuing chaos, Thorne dispatched 3 attackers, his movements fluid and predatory, leaving bodies twisted in the snow. But this resurrection came at a cost. Witnesses noted changes. Thorne's skin grew pallid, veins pulsing blue beneath like rivers of ink. He avoided mirrors, shattering one in the jailhouse when it reflected not his face, but a skeletal grimace. Amelia Crow, observing from her cabin, divined the truth through bones cast in firelight. "He's bound to the land," she told Luke Harlan. "The mountains gave him life, but they demand payment. Souls fear something vital. Haunting events multiplied. Villagers reported visions. Thorne standing motionless in graveyards, conversing with headstones, children waking to find him at their windows, staring with empty eyes. One farmer, Elias's old friend Jedidiah, vanished after confronting him. His body was found days later, drained of blood, eyes wide in eternal terror. Whispers of vampirism spread, blending European folklore with local tales of blood drinkers from the hills. Reverend Grant, fueled by righteous fury, organized a vigil in the church. Candles guttered as he preached.
"This abomination walks among us. We must cast it out with fire and faith."
But during the sermon, the doors creaked open, and Thorne entered, his presence sucking the warmth from the room. "Your God abandoned me long ago, preacher," he said, his breath visible in the sudden cold. The congregation fled, leaving Grant trembling. Luke Harlan, torn between loyalty and dread, delved deeper. Sneaking into Thorne's quarters, he found a hidden journal, pages yellowed, ink faded, entries from the war lost in the woods after ambush. Found a cave, ancient markings, voice offered strength for service. Accepted. Now the hunger begins. Luke confronted Amelia. What service? To what? She revealed legends of the Old Ones, entities predating settlers, guardians of the mountains who granted boons but twisted the recipient into their tool. The story's core mystery unfolded in a chilling sequence. Amelia, Luke, and a reluctant Grant formed an uneasy alliance to uncover Thorne's origin. They ventured into the forbidden bluffs, guided by Amelia's visions. The path wound through thorn-choked trails, the air growing thick with the scent of rot. In a hidden glade, they found ruins, stone circles etched with symbols resembling Cherokee script but older, perhaps Mississippian. There, under starlight pieced by fog, they witnessed Thorne in ritual kneeling before a spring, murmuring incantations. His body convulsed, expelling shadows that wreathed like smoke. "He's feeding them?" Amelia whispered. The entities sustain him, but he must provide. Lives, essence. A confrontation ensued. Grant brandished a cross, Luke his gun, Amelia a pouch of herbs. Thorn turned, his face a mask of anguish and rage.
You don't understand. I protect you from worse.
The battle was visceral. Bullets glanced off Thorn as if he were missed, but Amelia's chant weakened him, forcing revelations. In flashbacks narrated through his pained confessions, we learn of his death in the war, not from bullets, but starvation in that cave. Desperate, he invoked the Old Ones, trading his mortality for power to end the chaos. But the price was eternity as their enforcer, culling threats to the land, outlaws, intruders, but growing hungrier, his humanity eroding. As Part 2 crescendos, the trio escapes, but not unscathed. Grant succumbs to a heart seized by fear, collapsing in the snow. Luke bears scars from Thorn's grasp, cold burns that never heal. Amelia vows to break the curse, but the sheriff vanishes into the night, his laughter echoing like cracking ice. Hollow Ridge awakens to more disappearances, the mountains seeming to close in, as if complicit in the horror. The narrative leaves us breathless. Thorn, once hero, now eternal predator, his undying form a prison. What will become of the town? As spring thaws approach, the shadows promise more revelations and more blood. To truly grasp the chilling essence of Sheriff Thorn's tale, we must delve into the historical and cultural tapestry of the Ozark Mountains in 1881, a region where reality and legend intertwine like roots beneath the soil. The Ozarks, spanning parts of Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, were a frontier crucible shaped by waves of migration, conflict, and isolation. By the late 19th century, the area was a patchwork of small settlements, much like our fictional Hollow Ridge, where self-reliance was law and the supernatural filled the gaps left by science. Post-Civil War, the Ozarks bore deep scars. Missouri, a border state, saw brutal guerrilla warfare. Think Quantrill's raiders and Bloody Bill Anderson, whose atrocities left communities distrustful of authority. Sheriffs like Thorn were often war veterans, enforcing order in lawless lands plagued by feuds, moonshining, and banditry. Historical records from the era, such as county ledgers and newspapers like the Springfield Leader, document real figures, sheriffs gunned down in ambushes, only for legends to claim their survival through miracles or pacts. One such tale echoes Thorn's. Sheriff John Hargrove of Taney County reportedly shot multiple times in 1879, but rose again, attributed to folk medicine or divine intervention. But whispers hinted at darker forces. Culturally, the Ozarks were a melting pot of folklore. Settlers, primarily Scots-Irish, brought tales of fairies, witches, and the undead from the Appalachian roots, blended with Native American influences, Cherokee, Osage, and earlier Mississippian cultures. The region birthed unique legends. The Cherokee spoke of Nanihi, invisible spirits guarding the mountains, and Uktana, serpentine beings granting power but demanding sacrifice. Osage lore included shape-shifters and immortality curses, where warriors bound to the land became eternal watchers. Haints and ghosts were commonplace. Books like Vance Randolph's Ozark Magic and Folklore 1947, but drawing from 19th century oral traditions, detail stories of restless dead refusing burial, wandering hollows. Randolph, an ethnographer, collected tales from elders recalling 1880s hauntings, apparitions of hanged men swinging from trees, or witch balls of light leading travelers astray. In our story, Thorn's undying nature mirrors these, perhaps inspired by the spooklight phenomenon near Joplin, Missouri, where ghostly orbs appear since the 1880s, attributed to spirits or marsh gas, but folklore claims they're souls of the unburied. Witchcraft loomed large. Granny women, like Amelia, were real midwives and healers using herbalism, divination, and charms. They brewed potions from mandrake ciphers for visions and belladonnazes for trances, blending European hedge witchery with native practices. Accusations of witchcraft were rife. In 1880s, Arkansas trials echoed Salem, with women hanged for cursing livestock. Thorn's pact evokes crossroads deals akin to Robert Johnson's blues legend, but rooted in Ozark tales of selling souls to Old Scratch for prowess in hunting or law-keeping. The landscape itself fueled eeriness. Karst topography, cave springs, sinkholes, bred superstitions. Blanchard Springs or Marvel Cave were sites of rituals. Explorers in the 1880s reported ghostly echoes and unexplained lights. Mining booms brought transients, heightening tensions. Lead and zinc digs unearthed ancient artifacts, sparking curses. Folklore warned of cave dwellers, prehistoric entities disturbed by progress. Socially, isolation amplified trauma. With no railroads until the 1880s, communities were cut off, fostering oral storytelling around fires. Ballads like The Knoxville Girl carried moral warnings, while ghost stories educated on dangers, don't wander alone, respect the land. The 1881 setting aligns with a drought year per historical weather logs, leading to failed crops and omens, mirroring our narrative's soared wells and withered fields. Blending fact and folklore creates unsettling authenticity. Real events like the Bald Nobers vigilante group that formed 1883, but precursors in 1880s, echo Thorne's tyrannical justice, masked men enforcing law through terror, later accused of supernatural pacts. Legends of the Albino Farm near Springfield involve ghostly figures in abandoned estates, while Hatchet Man's Bridge tells of an immortal killer. In modern accounts, like Ozark Mountain Law podcasts, episodes detail haunted sheriff's offices from the era where deputies reported apparitions of executed criminals. Online forums share family stories, great-grandparents seeing undead wanderers in the 1880s, perhaps shocked veterans mistaken for ghosts. This context eerie, ifies our tale. Thorne isn't anomaly but archetype, born from cultural fears of unchecked authority, war's lingering horror, and nature's indifference. The Ozarks' blend of Christianity and paganism created cognitive dissonance, preachers decrying witches while secretly consulting them. As Randolph noted, in the Ozarks, belief in the supernatural is as natural as breathing.
Thus,
The Sheriff Who Wouldn't Die isn't mere fiction, it's a shadow cast by real history, where the line between man and monster blurs in the mountain mist. As we uncover these layers, the past feels alive, whispering warnings to the present. Beyond the surface chills of our narrative lies a labyrinth of symbolic and psychological depths, where the tale of Sheriff Elias Thorne mirrors universal fears and cultural traumas. In this ominous exploration, we dissect the story's sinews, revealing how it taps into the human psyche's darkest recesses, reflecting on immortality as curse, authority's corruption, and isolation's madness. Symbolically, Thorne embodies the undying lawman, an archetype of eternal vigilance gone awry. His refusal to die symbolizes the persistence of trauma. Post-Civil War Ozarks were haunted by unburied grudges, much like America's lingering divisions. Psychologically, drawing from Froude's uncanny, Thorne's revival evokes the familiar turned stranger protector becoming predator, stirring dread in the Heimlich, he's homey becoming unheimlich, he's unhomely. His healing wounds represent repressed memories resurfacing, festering until they consume. Thematically, immortality curses connect to universal fears of stagnation. Myths like the Wandering Jew or Tethanus Eseu granted eternal life, but not youth. Parallel Thorne's plight. Life without end is torment, a prison where humanity erodes. In human nature, this probes existential angst. Sartre's nausea at endless existence without purpose. Thorne's hunger symbolizes addiction to power, feeding on fear like a psychological vampire, echoing narcissistic leaders who cling to authority beyond reason. Cultural trauma weaves through the Ozarks as microcosm of American frontier mythos where manifest destiny clashed with indigenous spirits. Thorne's pact with the Old Ones reflects a colonial wound, the settlers' hubris in claiming a land that was never truly theirs. The Ozarks, with their ancient caves and sacred springs, were spiritual strongholds for native peoples like the Osage and Cherokee. Thorne's transformation mirrors historical accounts, like those in D. Brown's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, where indigenous dispossession left spiritual scars, manifesting in tales of vengeful spirits punishing trespassers. Psychologically, Thorne's story taps into the fear of losing control. Jung's concept of the shadow, the repressed, darker self, finds form in Thorn's transformation. His humanity, once defined by duty, is overtaken by the shadow's hunger, a force that thrives on violence and fear. This resonates with modern anxieties, the loss of self to obsession, whether it's addiction, ideology, or power. Thorn's glowing eyes and cold breath symbolize this alienation, a visual cue of the soul's erosion, akin to Gothic archetypes like Dracula, whose immortality is a curse of eternal isolation. The Ozark's isolation amplifies this. In 1881, communities were cut off by geography and culture, fostering a collective psyche where fear of the other thrived, be it witches, spirits, or outsiders. Thorn, once a community pillar, becomes this other, embodying the fear of betrayal by trusted institutions. This mirrors real-world distrust post-Civil War, where sheriffs, often former soldiers, wielded unchecked power, sometimes turning tyrannical, as seen in vigilante groups like the Bold Nobers. Their masked justice, documented in regional histories, parallels Thorn's shift from protector to predator, a cautionary tale about authority's fragility. The supernatural elements. Thorn's pact, the old ones, draw from universal myths of deals with the devil. From Foss to Robert Johnson's Crossroads, humanity dreads the cost of forbidden power. In the Ozarks, this takes a localized form. The land itself is the devil, its spirits demanding fealty. Amelia's role as a granny woman bridges this, her Cherokee, Scots heritage embodying cultural syncretism. Her warnings to Thorn reflect the indigenous respect for nature's balance, disrupted by his greed for survival. This connects to eco-horror themes, where nature retaliates against human overreach, seen in modern works like The Witch or Ozark folktales of cursed forests. The community's response, fear, superstition, rebellion, mirrors societal reactions to the unknown. Reverend Grant's apocalyptic sermons channel collective panic, akin to millenarian movements post-war, where preachers saw omens in every calamity. Luke's doubt reflects youth confronting corrupted idols, a universal coming-of-age trauma. Amelia's defiance, blending herbalism and mysticism, represents resistance against patriarchal and colonial oppression, a feminist undercurrent in a male-dominated frontier. The cave ruins, with their ancient symbols, evoke the sublime, are mixed with terror at forces beyond comprehension. This aligns with Edmund Burke's philosophy. The sublime overwhelms, reducing humanity to insignificance. Thorn's ritual feeding of shadows suggests a cosmic horror, Lovecraftian in its implication of entities indifferent to human morality. Yet, it's grounded in Ozark reality. Archaeological records from the 1880s describe Mississippian mounds and petroglyphs, fueling settler myths of lost civilizations guarding secrets. Thematically, the story probes justice's cost. Thorn's undying state ensures order, but sacrifices empathy, posing a question: is safety worth dehumanization? This echoes modern debates on surveillance states or militarized policing, where security erodes freedom. His eternal hunger mirrors capitalism's insatiable drive, consuming lives for progress, a critique resonant in 1881's mining booms, where workers died in collapsing shafts while owners profited. The psychological horror lies in Thorn's awareness. Unlike mindless undead, he knows his curse, his confessions revealing a man trapped in his choices. This self-awareness amplifies the tragedy, aligning with existentialist dread. To live forever, knowing you're a monster, is hell. His final plea, "I protect you from worse," suggests a martyr complex, a twisted justification for his atrocities, akin to historical figures who rationalized violence as duty. Culturally, the Ozarks' blend of Christian and pagan beliefs creates a liminal space where Thorn's story thrives. The church's failure to exorcise him reflects religion's limits against primal forces, a tension documented in Randolph's folklore, where preachers competed with conjure women for authority. This duality, faith versus superstition, mirrors humanity's struggle to reconcile reason with the irrational, a universal fear when science fails to explain the uncanny. The narrative's sensory richness, fog blood, cold breath, amplifies its psychological grip. Gothic literature uses atmosphere to externalize inner turmoil. Thorn's decaying form mirrors his soul's rot, while the mountain's oppressive presence reflects collective guilt. The listener, immersed in these images, feels the dread of being watched, a primal fear of predators in the dark, rooted in evolutionary psychology. As we unravel these layers, Thorn's tale becomes a mirror for our fears of death's futility, of power's corruption, of nature's vengeance. It's a story that lingers because it's not just about a sheriff in 1881. It's about us, our choices, and the shadows we cast when we bargain with forces we don't understand. The Ozarks, with their haunted hollows, are merely the stage. The true horror is human nature's capacity to become its own monster. And so, dear listeners, we reach the end of our journey into the heart of Hollow Ridge, where the tale of Sheriff Elias Thorn lingers like a chill that refuses to thaw. The Ozark Mountains, with their fog-shrouded peaks and whispering caves, hold their secrets close, but tonight we've pried open a forbidden door. The sheriff who wouldn't die is no mere legend. He is a warning, a shadow cast across time, reminding us that some prices are too steep, some bargains too dark to survive unscathed. What became of Thorn? The oral histories, fragmented as they are, offer no neat resolution. Some say he wandered deeper into the mountains, becoming one with the spirits he served, a spectral guardian whose eyes still glow in the mist. Others claim Amelia Crow, with her ancient rites, severed his bond to the old ones, banishing him to a true death. But at the cost of her own life, her cabin found empty, herbs scattered like ash. Young Luke Harlan, scarred and haunted, left Hollow Ridge, his journals warning of a hunger that might return. The town itself faded, its name lost to maps, its ruins swallowed by vines, as if the mountains reclaimed what was theirs. But the story doesn't end in 1881. Travelers in the Ozarks today, hikers on the Ozark Trail, cavers in Blanchard Springs, report eerie encounters, a tall figure in a tattered coat, watching from the tree line, footsteps echoing in caves where none should be. Modern accounts describe a ghost sheriff near Branson, Missouri, seen near abandoned mines, his badge glinting under moonlight. Are these echoes of Thorn, or merely the mountain's endless capacity to birth new terrors? The tale's power lies in its unanswered questions. What drove Thorn to his pact? Was it desperation, pride, or a twisted sense of duty? Did he protect Hollow Ridge from a greater evil, as he claimed, or was he merely its puppet, feeding an ancient hunger? And what of us listeners? What bargains have we made, knowingly or not, that bind us to shadows we can't escape? This story haunts because it's universal. We fear the undying because it forces us to confront our mortality, what we'd sacrifice to cheat death, and what we'd become. Thorn's transformation mirrors our own potential to lose ourselves in pursuit of power, safety, or purpose. The Ozarks, with their primal beauty and terror, amplify this, a reminder that nature is neither friend nor foe, but a force that demands respect. In 1881, Hollow Ridge learned this the hard way. Today, we're still learning. As you sit there, perhaps in the quiet of your room, consider the shadows around you. The creak of a floorboard, the flicker of a light. Innocent or something more. The sheriff who wouldn't die teaches us that the past is never truly buried. It lingers watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. So, the next time you walk a lonely path, when the wind carries a whisper that sounds too much like your name, ask yourself what lies behind you, and will you dare to look? Pause, letting silence hang, then soft wind howls fade in. Thank you for joining me on the shadow behind you. If this tale has chilled your blood, share it with those brave enough to listen. Subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us your own stories of the uncanny. Perhaps they'll find their way into our next descent. Until then, keep your lanterns lit, your doors locked, and your eyes on the darkness. For the shadows are always closer than you think. Closing music, a slow fade of eerie strings, blending with a distant, mournful howl, then silence.